blue stays permanently.
All right. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the full Ways and Means Committee, which I'll now proudly call to order. It seems we have a quorum present. Today we'll not be voting on any legislation, but we'll be assigning to the subcommittee and having the first reading by the authors to the committee. Before we get underway, too, I'd like to tell everybody that Representative Selye is in grave health in intensive care back home. He's a dear, gentle man, and I'll ask you all to keep him in your prayers. The encouraging is the news we got today is that he's actually much better today than yesterday, but yesterday was a really, really bad day for him, and he's in ICU in Macon, and certainly ask every member of this committee and the audience to keep him in your thoughts and in your heart and in your prayers. So, if we could, is Representative Freeman with us? Okay, we'll come back to that. Mr. Secretary, will you read House Bill 900, please, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Where are you?
19.
There we go.
HB 900 to amend, this is by Representative Bruce of 64th, to amend Code Section 48889.1 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to distribution of local option sales tax proceeds after the certification of additional qualified municipalities.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Bruce, you have the option for either a formal presentation there or an informal at the table, whichever you would prefer. We'd be glad to have either, but we're delighted to have you in front of the committee, and you're recognized for the purpose of summarizing your bill, and then we will assign.
Thank you. Informal is better.
Thank you, sir.
And I want to make sure that we don't confuse House Bill 900 with House Resolution 900. And when I got that, I said, okay, I should be able to hit the lottery if I got that. But this bill is very simple. As you know, the only area left in Fulton County that is not incorporated is the South Fulton County. And there's portions of South Fulton that have even been turned into cities at this particular point. So we have a very isolated area. And what we're trying to do is offset a $10 million deficit in the funding that's in existence right now for the Special Service Tax District. And what this bill does, it allows that area for purposes of distribution of the sales tax to be treated as if it was incorporated. That's really all it does. And it allows the county to have the flexibility to put the money into the Special Service Tax District to offset that $10 million. That's really it. And the way it's written, it only affects South Fulton County. It does not affect any other portion of the state.
Any member of the committee have any questions for the author of this legislation? Seeing none, Representative Bruce, we're going to assign that to our Sales Tax Subcommittee. The co-chair people of that subcommittee are Representative Jeff Lewis or Representative Chuck Martin. If you'll contact either one of those gentlemen, they will arrange a hearing for you at a mutually convenient time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to have you with us.
Bye-bye.
Representative Royal, would you like to present from your seat? If so, Mr. Secretary, will you read House Bill 1014, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, HB 1014 by Representative Royal of 171st to amend Title 20 and 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to, respectively, to education and revenue and taxation so as to revise and change certain provisions regarding Georgia Higher Education Savings Plan.
Chairman Royal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1014 is simply a technical correction or cleanup bill for legislation we passed last year dealing with the Georgia Higher Education Savings Plan. If you will remember, we took the $100,000 cap off of income for the the citizens of the state of Georgia. Also made it possible for grandparents, aunts, uncles, or anyone to participate in up to a $2,000 tax credit for these plans. House Bill 1014, the first 4 sections just deal with the marketing aspect of the legislation. Section 5 deals with the definition of a qualified education plan and a program. Section 6 is a change in the cross-reference that was mentioned in the earlier bill. Section 7 clarifies the years in which the plan is effective. Section 8 also clarifies the years, and it also provides for recapture for out-of-state rollovers. And Section 9 also is a recapture provision for the bill. It has a fiscal note on it already, and there is no physical impact other than last year's legislation. The Office of the Treasury asked for this legislation. Mr. Dan Eversole, who is in the audience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any questions for the primary author of this legislation? I would say from the chair how much I appreciate the gentleman bringing this as a candidate, hopefully someday to become a spoiling grandparent. This has special appeal to me. I certainly qualify by age, but I do appreciate your hard work on this legislation, and I've had nothing but sincere compliments throughout the state on your initiative last year, and glad to see you back with further improvements this year.
Thank you.
We're going to assign that to the Income Tax Subcommittee, and I hope you can get on with getting that through the process very, very soon. Thank you very much, Chairman Royal. Mr. Secretary, House Bill 957, please, sir.
HB 957 by Representative Stevens of the 164th to amend Code Section 4883 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to exemptions from sales and use taxation.
Chairman Stevens, tell us about it, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill that is sunsetting this year that we passed a couple of years ago that allows for sales and use tax exemption for essentially written around the goodwill industries that saves tons of landfill from some of the material that we're throwing in there now. And it also provides for employment for some of our disabled. So it's, as you might notice on the second page, it has a $200,000 fiscal note per year. If I remember correctly, the previous bill had between 150 to 300, so they pretty much nailed it. Not much of a fiscal impact, but it saves. It's a great welfare to work bill, keeping people employed and keeping junk out of our landfill.
That's a great combination. I don't know how that ordinarily fit together, but that was a good summary. And coming from the chairman of economic development, we especially appreciate that. Are there any questions for the primary author of this bill to reset the sunset I think we're talking about? Any questions? Seeing none, we're going to assign that one to our sales tax subcommittee. And if you don't mind, while you're hot, get a drink of water, and I'll ask the secretary to read House Bill 959.
HB 959 by Representative Stevens of the 164th to amend Article 3, Chapter 13, Title 48, Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to excise tax on rooms, lodging, and accommodations.
Chairman Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is another bill that, as a result of more and more pressure for us to move more and more taxes to sales and consumption, which is a very laudable thing for us to do, we tend to forget sometimes that we can make industries very uncompetitive, especially when it comes to large lodging and room accommodations in areas like Atlanta, where we've got the Congress Center. And all this bill tends to do is just placing a 15% cap on total taxable events for this particular industry to keep them competitive with our other large destination cities. That is to say, the aggregate amount of this total tax is not more than 15%.
That's going to be an interesting one. I want to hear the debate on that. I'm sure we're going to be involved in a definition of applicable use taxes and so forth coming up. But any questions for the author of that? Which number are you? You're just waving? Okay, thank you. Okay. We're gonna assign that to our Public Finance Subcommittee, and that's Chairman Scott or Chairman Parsons. Be interested to see that one move through the system. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, House Resolution 1037, if you would, please, sir.
H.R. 1037 by Representative Stevens, the 164th. Proposing amendment to the Constitution so as to authorize the governing authority of any county or municipality subject to referendum approval to exempt from ad valorem taxation in whole or in part inventories on retail businesses. This is the third of four in the Ron Stevens economic development package for today, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Stevens, tell us about it.
I'm glad I'm getting all of mine out of the way first day today, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill that's probably the least restrictive of all the inventory taxes that I've introduced. As all the committee members know, there's no southern surrounding state that has a tax on ad valorem inventory, which makes us very uncompetitive to all the states, especially on the surrounding borders. All this does is it gives the local option to those taxing authorities to place or not place those inventories on their particular taxing district. It is, again, the least restrictive of all the inventory tax bills that I am and plan to introduce.
Okay. Is this a constitutional amendment as well?
Yes.
It is.
Okay. Any questions for the author of House Resolution 1037, our distinguished chairman of Economic Development? Any questions? Seeing none, we're going to make sure you cover every subcommittee we have with your package. That one's going to go to ad valorem tax, and that's going to get you to Chairman Royal or Chairman Sims. So curious to see what your choice might be at that one, too. House Resolution 1038, please, Mr. Secretary.
H.R. 1038 by Representative Stevens of the 164th, proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to authorize the governing authority of any county or municipality subject to referendum approval to exempt from ad valorem taxation in whole or in part inventories from retail furniture businesses.
Chairman Stevens, tell us about that one.
The last of the tax reform package of the Representative Stevens District 164 package today, Mr. Chairman, has to do with the retail furniture business. As you might know, inventories in this state that have a large retail value, when available, will move, and that is essentially what's happened with this particular business. Is they have moved a large portion of their businesses, especially their manufacturing and their home offices, to another state, namely North Carolina, and they will place essentially a showroom in the state of Georgia, and if you want to buy it, they'll ship it to you. And all this bill tends to do is remove those inventories, this specific business, from inventory taxes in this state.
Thank you, sir. A noble undertaking. Any questions for the chairman on House Resolution 1038 from members of the committee? Seeing none, that one also will be assigned to our ad valorem tax subcommittee, and we look forward to learning more about that legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, House Resolution, please, 1056 by Chairman Mills.
H.R. 1056 by Representative Mills, the 25th, proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to provide that the sales and use tax for educational purposes shall only be distributed on the basis of full-time student enrollment in a county where the proceeds are distributed between a county and a school district and an independent school district located in such county, and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Chair recognizes the distinguished chair of the Banking Committee, Chairman Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Resolution 1056 deals with the sales and use tax for educational purposes. We actually passed this concept through the General Assembly last year. It did not. It died in the Senate, and I've just reintroduced it in a different, I think, a more simplified version, which says that when a sales and use tax for educational purposes is put in place, then the distribution of that tax must be based on the student count. In other words, just because you have a political power broker in place that may get more for their city If it bleeds over into two county school systems, this would present fairness to the student. The money would follow the student, same fairness for every student. And that's basically what the bill does. It is a constitutional amendment, and it would have to be voted on by the citizens of this state, which, again, we think letting the money follow the student in the fairest fashion is the best way to go.
Okay. Representative Sims has a question for you, Mr. Chairman.
And I may get with you in a few minutes offline, but what brought this on? Is there a certain district up your way that's brought this on, or somewhere?
There is. I'll just tell you, there's I think 4 or 5 of these situations in the state. The city school district of Beaufort bleeds over into Gwinnett County and into Hall County. I represent Hall County. In order to put a sales and use education tax on the ballot, they have to agree with all the school systems within the county have to agree. So when Gwinnett's came up, they said, well, we want $14 million of the take, city school district in Beaufort. Well, they got it. So then when Halls came up, and I think they had 9 students or less at that time in Hall County, they said, we want $3 million of your, or else you can't put the question on the ballot. Well, we were basically held hostage, and it shortchanged students in our district, but they got $17 million, and they have one of the finest schools. I recommend you visit it at any time. They've got a great complex down there, but really at the expense of some of our other students, and I just think this puts it fairly.
Chairman Lewis has a question, if you would, Mr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is just to help satisfy my curiosity. I'm not even sure this question goes to this bill, but when you have an independent school system as well as a county school system, I know up in where I live, we have some county students that attend the independent school, the city schools. Does this bill go to that point at all? And if it does, how might it?
It doesn't affect where they attend at all. Okay. They can still attend wherever they want. It just would prevent a situation like, for example, if a city said, you know what, we realize the county really wants this 1 cent sales tax bad. So the only way we're going to agree to it, and that's what it strikes on line 14 and 13, it says that they can do it based on the total student enrollment of all school districts in the county, and then there's that or, and it says or upon such other formula for distribution as may be authorized by local law. I'm striking that, saying basically, you know, the formula really ought to be just based on per student, not somebody who happens to have the political power to hold another system hostage and get more for their students while the other system gets less.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
25, who's that? Chairman Royal.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give a better or more historical synopsis of this. I introduced the original legislation which created this SPLOST for education. We recognize this flaw. I applaud Representative Mills for correcting this. Either the year or the year after that, I went to the well of the, in fact, I got as far as the well of the house to correct that. And there's a little school system over there called Bremen. And Speaker Murphy, when I got to the well, says, son. And we pulled the bill, but anyway, this has long been needed. What triggers this is a concurrent resolution of the school systems within the county. And they have to agree. That's what Representative Mills was talking about, and they have to agree, and that provides the hostage situation. But anyway, this is a good piece of legislation.
Thank you for those observations. 26, is that somebody, or have I just got a wrong light?
That's just me again.
Okay, 23, is that anybody?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too agree with the intent of this. I guess the question I have is, Representative Mills, is you do believe that we have to do this by a constitutional amendment, and there's no way to do it by general law?
That's what Legislative Council tells me. And of course, Joe Shorter helped draft this. We've looked at it for many, many years, including that year that Representative Royal was in the well, and I was cheering him on so loudly, quietly in my seat. But anyway, it does have to be done by.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. Any other questions for the author of this legislation? Seeing none, welcome, Chairman Roberts. We are glad that you decided to honor us with your presence today. No apologies necessary. We're just tickled to have you. Chairman Mills, we're going to assign that H.R. 1056 to our sales tax subcommittee. I would also ask the committee's indulgence if we could suspend for about, I'll give 4 more minutes. Chairman Knox advised us that because of other obligations he was going to be a few minutes late, and I told him we'd stay here till at least 2:30. So if y'all don't mind, we'll suspend, enjoy one another's company, and hopefully he'll arrive. Otherwise, we will adjourn at 2:30. Work number.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 822, Representative Freeman, did you not address that one, or was he?
Well, we called and he wasn't here. Are you going to?
Well, if that's okay, he mentioned something to me about possibly just addressing this bill. Don't know anything about it, other than I know that someone from in Macon has asked us to, and so, but I would like to, if it's the will of the chairman, to get it in the process.
Did he ask you to address the bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Certainly, if that's the case, I take the gentleman as his word. You recognize, please, to summarize House Bill 822 on behalf of its principal author, Representative Freeman. You're recognized for that purpose, sir.
Okay. I could read the bill to explain it. It actually is dealing with related to ad valorem taxes on cars after somebody passes away, and that's about the extent that I know about it. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry for not knowing more about it.
I'll tell you what. Let's suspend. Let's suspend action on that for the time being. And now that we've got Chairman Knox here, we'll come back to that after you've had an opportunity to read it. Which is generally a precursor to presenting something for most non-freshman members of the committee. But like Chairman Roberts, we're tickled to have you here. If you need a quiet place to read, that's okay. It's okay with us, too. And you might actually want to get legal counsel. Thank goodness we're on TV. It's with great pride that I ask the Secretary to read House Bill 976, please.
Mr. Chairman, HB 976 by Representative Knox, the 24th, to amend Chapter 8 of Title 53 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated related to fees and taxes regarding insurance and for other purposes.
Chairman Knox, recognize you for the purpose of summarizing that bill. You can do so formally there or be seated at that table, whichever is your preference.
Well, since I'm here, this is all right with the committee.
We're happy to have you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill may look somewhat familiar since y'all considered the same last year, and it's unchanged from then. You may recall that this bill allows for a difference in tax treatment of health savings accounts. The purpose of it being is to encourage the marketing and sale of those products. The health savings accounts are for insurance companies, at least on the insurance portion of it, are fairly low profit type products. They haven't reached nearly the amount of penetration in the health insurance market that they should have by now. I think the insurance department estimates there are 60-some thousand policies that have been sold that are currently out there. And we simply need to have more than that. We have 1.7 million uninsured. 500,000 of those are the immortals, and they could probably afford to buy and probably ought to have some health insurance coverage. And health savings accounts, I think, are a way that we can reach those individuals. But the problem is that they're going to have to be sold those products. They're not going to go buy them. They've already told us with their feet that they're not going to purchase. They're not going to go looking for health insurance because they don't think they need it. And then, of course, there are other small businesses and individuals who are not currently able to purchase these policies, or at least think they can't for a variety of reasons. What the policy does is change the tax treatment of the health savings accounts, both for the purchaser and for the seller, in this case being the insurance companies. And the main treatment for the insurance companies is that they are allowed to have a tax abatement of the premium tax. And the purpose of that is to help encourage them to market the products to the public, and to hopefully to involve the public more in the health savings account market, which, according to most of the gurus these days in healthcare, is the way to get individuals to make more of the decisions about their own health care and to be more in control of their health care and the cost of their health care. So that's what this bill is about. It gives an abatement of the 2.25% for the policy, for the premiums on the policy, and then gives some additional benefits to the purchaser for the income tax on the premium tax on the insurance portion of the bill. As you know, currently under current law, you already get on health savings accounts, you can take those deductions off the health savings account off of your federal and state taxes currently. So that's basically it.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that explanation. It's my understanding of the premium tax, that's a tax in lieu of corporate income taxes for insurance companies. And as I understand your legislation, before us ask that, currently it's bifurcated where it's it's a 4.75% of the premium amount. I think 2.5 of that 4.75% goes to the local governments and 2.25 to the state, and all this does is this doesn't affect the local share of the premium tax, does it, or not?
No, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. Actually, the premium tax provisions are in two separate sections of the code, and the code section that we're referring to in this bill only refers to the section that applies to state taxes, not county and municipal taxes, which are authorized under a separate section of the code. So if counties and cities presently levy taxes on the form of premium taxes on these policies, and they want to continue to do that to their citizens who are trying to provide their own health care, they can still do that. This bill doesn't affect their right to collect those taxes at all. This is strictly on the revenue that the state would collect for itself.
I'm a little confused. I'm not aware that counties and cities now levy a premium tax. I think that's under the state code that it's.
It is under the state code, but they're two separate.
But they share in the bounty of it, so to speak. Okay. Right. Are there any questions for the author of House Bill 976 from members of the committee? Anyone? Okay. Mr. Chairman Knox, we're going to assign that to our income tax subcommittee. And just so you'll know, Chairman Martin Scott or Chairman Jan Jones are the chairs of that subcommittee. If you'll contact either of those, they'll, I'm sure, work with you and arrange a subcommittee hearing on that matter.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Secretary, would you please read House Bill 977? If you would stay there, Chairman Knox, that's another one.
Yes. HB 977 by Representative Knox, the 24th, to amend Chapter 8 of Title 33, Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to fees and taxes regarding insurance and premiums.
Thank you. You're recognized to summarize that bill.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My explanation of this bill is that it's the identical bill with the exception of the rate of premium tax that is abated on in the two cases. One is 1.25 and the other one is 2.25. The purpose of that being is to have some flexibility in what what the state can stand in the way of loss of revenue in the event that there are a lot of these policies sold and are in force. The estimate on the revenue at 2.25% loss was, I think, as of 2013, it might be as much as $20 million for the state, which is about the same number as the governor currently plans to spend on the HIP plan, which will pay premium tax subsidies for basically the same kind of coverage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any questions for the chairman about House Bill 977 from members of the committee? We will also assign that to our income tax subcommittee, and likewise look forward to hearing a lot more about that legislation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We suspended action momentarily on House Bill 822. Mr. Secretary, would you read, please?
HB 822 by Representative Freeman, the 140th, to amend Chapter 3 of Title 53 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to years support so as to provide for certain tax exemptions related to years support, to repeal conflicting laws and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Representative Peake for the purpose of helping out a friend that owes him now dearly.
Yes.
Representative Freeman. Representative Peake, can you summarize that legislation for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's amazing when you have limited intelligence how much smarter you can get in 5 minutes. And so hopefully I'm a little smarter.
We're not sure of that yet, but go ahead.
We'll be the judge of that.
Just teed you up again, didn't I, Coach? Sorry. Yeah. If this bill provides, if you didn't know, if you died in a certain year, your spouse or your estate would, before a will is probated, have the opportunity to apply for what's called a year's support, where they would be exempt from property taxes on your home. I didn't know that, but that is the case. What this bill does is apply that same exemption to automobiles, ad valorem tax on your automobiles, which is, I think, a darn good thing to probably do.
Well, I have several questions. Is that okay?
No, sir. I serve at the will of the chairman. So,
Chairman Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to commend Mr. Peake. I think he might be the only person up here that knows he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah. I've known that for a long time, Mr. Chairman.
We used to call that our First Steps program, didn't we? That's good. Are there? I don't think anybody's cruel enough to have any more questions. Thank you, Representative Peake, for that. We're lucky for you. We're actually going to assign that legislation to Chairman Royal Subcommittee at the in the ad valorem tax subcommittee.
I hope that you won't bring Mr. Freeman with you.
Thank you, Representative Peake, and I hope you'll always know and understand I don't kid anybody I don't like and respect, and certainly I do like and respect you, and thank you for your service. Is there anything else to come before the committee before we adjourn? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance and your hard work as usual. And yes, ma'am, Representative Teague, what number are you? 1. That's okay.
House Bill 900, was it assigned?
House Bill 900 was assigned. That was the first one out of the chute. Representative Bruce was here and summarized that quite competently, and it's in our sales tax subcommittee.
Thank you. I appreciate that, sir.
No further increase. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. We stand adjourned.